The roar of water had not stopped for 2 days. Colorado's spring rains had turned into a flood, swallowing pastures, barns, and dirt roads in a relentless surge of mud and debris. Amid the chaos, a farmer trudged through the soaked fields, his boots sinking deep into the sodden ground. He wasn't looking for anything except broken fences until he heard it. A sound so faint it almost disappeared under the current. A cry, high-pitched, fragile, desperate. He followed it to a concrete culvert half buried in mud. The stream of water rushed violently through the narrow tunnel, thrashing branches and rocks against the walls. And there, clinging to life, was something small. Wet fur. Trembling paws, eyes wide with terror. A wolf pup no more than a few weeks old, trapped inside fighting against the flood. The farmer froze. His first instinct was fear. A wolf even this tiny could mean danger. He'd heard the stories. Wolves taking livestock. Wolves that belonged in the wild, not in the hands of men. But the cry pierced through him again, sharp as broken glass. The little creature wasn't a predator. Now it was a heartbeat drowning in front of him. Rain pounded harder on the tin roofs of nearby barns. The stream surged louder, threatening to drag the pup into the dark mouth of the culvert. One wrong move and it would vanish. The farmer's chest tightened. He had only seconds. He knew the current could pull him under as easily as it could sweep the pup away. And still, he stepped forward. Water bit cold into his legs as he waded closer. The pup's tiny claws scratched at the concrete, its whimper breaking into a howl that didn't sound wild at all. It sounded like a plea. The farmer stretched out his hand. For a moment, their eyes met, man and wolf, predator and prey, strangers bound by survival. Would the pup bite? Would the current take them both? He didn't know. He didn't think. He lunged, grabbing wet fur, pulling against the furious weight of the flood. Mud splashed up his face. His boots slid, but he held on. With a final desperate heave, he yanked the trembling body into his arms. The pup collapsed against his chest, its breathing ragged but alive. Its fur soaked his shirt, its tiny heart hammering like a drum. The farmer staggered back onto solid ground, both of them shivering under the relentless rain. In that instant, the world around them seemed to fall silent. It was no longer just a storm, no longer just another spring flood. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined, a bond between a man who never asked for it and a wolf pup who would not survive without him. The farmer thought it was over, but what happened next would surprise everyone. His name was Samuel Reed, though most neighbors simply called him Sam. At 42, he carried the kind of quiet resilience carved by years of tending land in Colorado's high plains. Sam wasn't the kind of man who chased headlines or adventures. His days were measured in the steady rhythm of milking cows, fixing fences, and watching the seasons turn like clockwork. He lived on a modest farm outside of Fort Collins, a patch of land inherited from his grandfather. The house was simple, a white frame structure with a slanted porch, weathered wood siding, and a stove that rattled in winter. Life here was not easy, but it was honest. Sam had learned long ago that the land demanded respect, and in return, it offered moments of breathtaking beauty, golden sunrises spilling across open pasture, elk grazing in the distance, and the steady chorus of coyotes singing under the stars. Colorado in spring was a land of contrasts. After months of ice snowmelt rushed down from the Rockies, swelling rivers and carving new paths through valleys. The floods were both a curse and a blessing. They nourished the soil, but often left destruction in their wake. For Sam, the spring of 2025 was especially harsh. The flood that nearly drowned the wolf pup had also washed out sections of his land. He spent long days clearing debris, pulling tree branches out of irrigation ditches, and repairing fences torn apart by the current. But Sam was used to rebuilding. He had done it countless times. What he was not prepared for was the tiny life he had pulled from the culvert. The wolf pup was unlike any calf dog or stray animal he'd ever cared for. Sam knew wolves were returning to Colorado after nearly a century of absence. The state had begun an ambitious reintroduction project aiming to restore between 30 and 50 wolves within the next 3 to 5 years. It was controversial. Some ranchers feared for their herds. Others saw it as a triumph for conservation, a chance to rebalance the ecosystem. Sam himself had stayed neutral until the pup landed in his arms. At first, he thought of calling wildlife services immediately. But the pup was barely breathing, and in that moment, the instinct to protect overpowered every other thought. He wrapped it in his jacket, carried it home, and set it down in the warmth of his kitchen. That decision would change the trajectory of both their lives. Sam's life had always been solitary. His wife had passed away years earlier, and his grown daughter now lived in Denver. The farm, once full of voices, had fallen into silence. He filled the quiet with work, rising before dawn, resting only when the stars returned. Yet when the wolf pup whimpered in his kitchen, wrapped in a threadbare towel, Sam felt something stir that had long been buried. The pup was frail, its fur matted with mud, its eyes barely able to open. Every few minutes, it let out a soft cry, as if calling for a mother who would never come. Sam sat at the table, unsure. He wasn't a rescuer. He wasn't a scientist. He was just a farmer who had stumbled into something extraordinary. Still, he couldn't walk away. The farm itself was a crossroads of nature. Hawks circled above his pastures, deer slipped silently through the tree line, and at night, coyotes yipped in the distance. Now, with the wolf pup inside his home, Sam stood at the center of a bigger story, one that connected his quiet farm to the future of Colorado's wild heart. The bond between man and wolf was not meant to happen, yet fate, carried on the current of a spring flood, had forced them together. Sam didn't know it yet, but the next few months would test his resolve, his values, and his understanding of what it meant to protect life on the edge of wilderness. Sam Reed was a farmer, a man of the land. But with a single rescue, his story was no longer just about fields and fences. It was about survival connection and the fragile thread that ties human hands to wild hearts. And the wolf pup. It was only beginning to find its voice. The morning after the storm, the farm was quiet. Water still dripped from the eaves, and the earth smelled of damp soil and pine. Sam walked into the kitchen where he had left the wolf pup, unsure if he would find it alive. For a moment, his heart sank. The towel on the chair was empty. But then, from beneath the table, came a soft shuffle. 2 eyes blinked up at him, wide golden, and filled with both fear and need. The pup had survived the night. Sam knelt slowly, careful not to startle it. His hands, rough from years of labor, trembled as he set down a small bowl of warm milk diluted with water. He didn't know what wolves ate at this age, but he knew hunger when he saw it. The pup sniffed, hesitated, then lapped clumsily at the liquid. Each swallow seemed to pull it back from the edge of exhaustion. For the first time, Sam felt relief wash over him, yet it was followed by doubt. What was he doing? A wolf wasn't a stray dog. It was a wild creature, part of a species that had only just begun to return to these mountains. He remembered the warnings from conservation posters at the feed store. Do not approach. Do not call professionals. He should have done that yesterday. But looking at the tiny animal licking milk from the rim of the bowl, he knew he couldn't have left it in the culvert. The pup was weak, but its spirit was fierce. When Sam reached to adjust the towel around it, the tiny jaws snapped a warning far larger than its size. Sam pulled back, surprised, and then smiled. That flash of wildness reminded him that this creature did not belong to him. It belonged to the forests, the rivers, the wide expanse of wilderness beyond his fences. Still, the line between fear and compassion blurred. The pup's whimper softened as it curled into the towel, its small body pressing close as if seeking warmth. Sam sat for hours that day, keeping watch, listening to the steady rhythm of its breathing. He should have been out mending fences, but instead he found himself memorizing every sound the pup made. That night, something unexpected happened. As Sam prepared to head upstairs, the pup whimpered again, louder this time, insistent. When he turned back, he saw it staggering unsteadily toward him, paws slipping on the wooden floor. It pressed against his boot, then collapsed in exhaustion. Sam lifted it carefully, unsure if he was crossing a line he shouldn't. The pup's head fell against his chest, its tiny heartbeat thudding against his ribs. In that moment, Sam felt the weight of responsibility settle over him. This was no longer about a single rescue. It was about survival and about the strange, fragile trust forming between man and wolf. Over the next few days, the pup began to show glimpses of life. It wobbled across the kitchen floor, testing its legs. It gnawed playfully at the hem of Sam's jeans. When the wind rattled the windows, it let out tiny howls, high-pitched and unsteady, like a song still learning its melody. Each sound tugged at something deep within Sam. He remembered his daughter as a toddler, clutching his finger with the same stubborn grip. He remembered nights sitting by his wife's hospital bed, listening to the fragile rhythm of her breath. Caring for the pup stirred memories he had buried beneath years of silence. And yet fear lingered. He knew the pup would grow. He knew neighbors would ask questions if they saw it. And he knew the law was clear: wolves were protected, but they were not pets. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, Sam carried the pup outside. The land stretched wide before them, fields scarred by flood mountains rising dark against the sky. The pup lifted its nose, sniffing the air, and for the first time it let out a howl. Small, broken, but real. The sound echoed across the farm, and Sam felt his chest tighten. It wasn't just a cry. It was a reminder this animal belonged to the wild, and one day he would have to let it go. For now, though, the pup was his responsibility. For now, their paths had crossed, and neither could walk away. Sam Reed had saved a life, but he didn't yet know that the life he saved would change his own. The days that followed were anything but simple. Raising a wolf pup was not like raising a farm dog. It was unpredictable, exhausting, and at times frightening. Yet for Sam it became the center of his world. The pup, he had not given it a name, afraid of what that might mean, grew stronger each morning. Its fur dried into a soft gray coat, its eyes sharpened into golden fire, and its small body gained weight. With strength came defiance. The pup chewed through towels, clawed at furniture, and tested every boundary Sam tried to set. But the hardest battles were not with torn jeans or broken chair legs. They were with survival itself. On the fourth night, the pup grew listless. Its breathing slowed, and its eyes lost their brightness. Sam panicked. He rummaged through the medicine cabinet, searching for anything that might help. Nothing seemed right. Nothing seemed safe. He wrapped the pup in blankets and sat by the wood stove, rocking it gently as though it were a child. All night he whispered, "Stay with me. Just stay." By dawn, the fever broke. The pup stirred, weak but alive. Sam exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Relief crashed over him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. In that moment, his bond with the wolf deepened. He had fought for its life, and in return it had clawed its way back to him. Caring for the pup forced Sam to adapt. He built a small pen in the barn lined with hay where it could move freely without wrecking his kitchen. He bought formula designed for orphaned wildlife, following instructions he found online. Each feeding was a ritual, Sam holding the bottle steady while the pup's sharp teeth grazed his fingers. Each gulp a reminder that survival depended on both of them. The pup, however, was no ordinary dependent. Its instincts began to show. At dusk, it would tilt its head toward the tree line, ears twitching at sounds Sam could not hear. Rabbits darting through grass, the distant wingbeat of owls, its senses were tuned to a frequency beyond human reach. One night, When coyotes yipped from afar, the pup answered with a thin, wavering howl. Sam felt his skin prickle. It was a sound ancient and wild, echoing long before farms or fences. But instincts brought challenges too. The pup tried to hunt. At first it pounced on moths and beetles in the barn. Later it lunged at chickens, forcing Sam to chase it off before the flock scattered in panic. His neighbors began to notice. One stopped by, shaking his head. "You're asking for trouble, Reed. That's not a pet, it's a predator." Sam didn't argue. He knew they were right. And yet, when the pup curled against him at night, whimpering if he dared leave the barn, Sam couldn't let go. Weeks passed. The pup grew bolder. It chased Sam's boots as he walked the pasture. It wrestled with stray pieces of rope, growling in triumph at its victories. At night, it curled in his lap, its breathing slow and even a living weight against his chest. And yet danger lurked. One morning, Sam found the pup collapsed again, its stomach tight. He rushed it to the vet in town, carrying it like fragile glass. The receptionist froze. "Is that a wolf?" Sam's silence was answer enough. The vet, an older woman with steady hands, examined the pup quietly. She didn't ask questions, but her eyes held warning. "This animal belongs to the wild, Sam. You can't keep it forever." Sam nodded, but his heart refused the truth. He just wanted the pup to survive today. And it did. The illness passed, leaving both man and wolf scarred but stronger. The turning point came one stormy evening. Lightning split the sky, thunder shook the earth, and the pup bolted from the barn. Sam sprinted into the rain, searching. He found it trembling under the porch, eyes wide with terror. Without thinking, he knelt in the mud, gathering it into his arms. Water streamed down his back, but the pup buried its face against him, whimpering like a child. For Sam, it was more than survival. It was trust. It was loyalty forged in fear. From that night forward, the wolf pup no longer cried when storms came. Instead, it pressed against Sam as if it had found its anchor. What neither of them knew was that the fiercest storms were still ahead, storms not of nature, but of society. By midsummer, the farm had returned to life. The fields shimmered green again, fences stood straight, and the river had calmed into a steady current. But peace was fragile. In Colorado, summer storms could rise without warning, violent, merciless, and swift. One late afternoon, the sky darkened in a way that made Sam uneasy. He had seen storms before, but this one felt different. The air was heavy still, as though the land itself held its breath. The wolf pup, now nearly 3 months old, sensed it too. Its ears pricked, its body rigid, and a low growl escaped its throat. When the first strike of lightning tore across the horizon, the pup bolted from the barn, its instincts pulling it into the open. Sam shouted, racing after it. Wind whipped through the pasture, bending trees, rattling loose sheets of tin from the shed. The pup stood exposed in the middle of the field, eyes fixed on the dark line rolling toward them. A wall of rain and hail. Sam didn't think. He ran. The storm hit with a fury that felt almost alive. Hailstones the size of marbles pounded the ground, bruising his arms as he shielded his face. The pup yelped, spinning in panic as ice struck its back. Sam dove, wrapping his arms around it, pulling it tight against his chest. Together, they tumbled into the mud. The wind roared, lifting debris, branches, tools, even parts of the barn roof, and hurling them across the field. One jagged plank slammed into the earth inches from Sam's shoulder. He staggered to his feet, cradling the pup, eyes searching for cover. The only option was the old root cellar at the edge of the field, half buried in earth. He sprinted toward it, slipping, stumbling, but refusing to fall. The pup whimpered, claws digging into his jacket. Lightning cracked again, close enough to rattle his teeth. He reached the cellar door just as another gust tore across the farm, snapping a massive branch from the cottonwood tree. The branch crashed down where they had been seconds earlier, shattering the fence in a spray of splinters. Sam yanked open the cellar door and dove inside. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the beam of his flashlight. His breath came ragged, the pup pressed, trembling against him. For a moment, all he could hear was the storm raging above, hail hammering the earth, thunder rolling like cannon fire. In that underground shelter, Sam realized how far they had come. Only weeks ago, he had pulled the pup from drowning waters. Now, once again, nature threatened to take it back. And once again, he refused to let go. The pup lifted its head, its golden eyes catching the flashlight's beam. For the first time, it didn't look frightened. It looked alert, listening. Sam frowned, following its gaze toward the cellar door. At first, he thought it was nothing. Then he heard the cracking of wood above, sharper, closer. The barn was collapsing. Sam cursed under his breath. His animals were still inside: 2 cows, 3 goats, and a dozen chickens. If the roof caved, they wouldn't survive. He couldn't just hide. He had responsibilities to his farm and to the creatures in his care. But leaving meant facing the storm again. And this time, he wouldn't just be risking himself, he'd be risking the pup. For a moment, he hesitated. Then the pup gave a sharp, urgent bark. It was the first time Sam had heard that sound from it, strong and commanding, almost as if it was telling him, "Go." Sam tucked the pup into the crate he had once used for carrying tools, securing it in the corner of the cellar. "Stay here," he whispered, though he doubted the pup would listen. Then, with a deep breath, he pushed the door open and plunged back into the storm. The scene outside was chaos. Rain blinded him, hail pummeled him, and the wind howled so loud he could barely hear his own shouts. He fought his way to the barn, each step a battle. Inside, the animals were panicked eyes, rolling white hooves clattering on wood. The roof sagged, creaking ominously. Sam worked frantically, opening gates, driving the cows out first. They stumbled into the storm, bawling in terror, but alive. The goats followed, then the chickens scattering into the field. Just as the last hen fluttered free, the roof gave way. Sam threw himself forward, rolling out of the barn as the structure collapsed behind him in a thunderous crash. For a moment, he lay in the mud chest, heaving, rain washing over him. The barn was gone, but the animals were safe. And then he heard it, a howl, not the high-pitched whimper of a pup, a full, fierce howl cutting through the storm. He turned toward the cellar. The pup had escaped the crate, climbed to the doorway, and was howling into the chaos, its voice raw, unsteady, but powerful. The sound jolted Sam to his feet. It was as if the pup was calling him back, anchoring him. Together, man and wolf had faced the storm and survived. When dawn finally broke, the farm was battered, the barn reduced to rubble, but both man and wolf were alive. The storm had tested them, pushed them to the edge, and revealed something neither had expected, that survival was not about strength alone, but about trust. And in that trust, their bond had become unshakable. The storm left scars across Sam's land, broken fences, uprooted trees, and the collapsed barn that had sheltered his animals for years. Rebuilding was hard, but not impossible. What weighed heavier than the destruction was the growing attention the wolf pup had begun to draw. By now, it was no longer the frail bundle Sam had carried from the flood. Its legs had grown stronger, its teeth sharper, and its eyes burned with a wild confidence. At dusk, its howls carried across the fields, echoing through the valley. And people noticed. Neighbors stopped by, their concern sharpened into suspicion. One leaned on the fence, squinting toward the barnyard, where the pup prowled behind wire mesh. "That's no dog, Reed. You know what you've got there." Sam stayed silent, but the unease spread. Rumors traveled faster than storms. Before long, a white pickup from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Department pulled into his driveway. 2 officers approached, wearing uniforms patched with the agency's crest. Their tone was calm but firm. "Mr. Reed, we've had reports. You're in possession of a wolf." Sam's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to say he had only saved a life, but the words caught in his throat. The officers explained the law clearly. Wolves were protected under state and federal guidelines. It was illegal to keep one in captivity without a permit. They weren't unkind. They recognized what he had done. One even admitted quietly, if you hadn't pulled it out of that culvert, it wouldn't have survived. But the rules were the rules. The pup belonged in professional care, not in a farmer's barn. Sam nodded, outwardly calm. Inside, the conflict raged. He had raised this creature from the edge of death. He had fed it, sheltered, it held it through storms. To surrender it now felt like betrayal. The days after the visit were heavy with tension. Sam tried to convince himself it was for the best. But each time he looked at the pup, watching it chase grasshoppers in the field, curling beside him at night, pressing its nose into his palm, he felt the weight of choice pressing harder. The pup was growing fast. Its paws seemed too large for its body, its muscles tightening into the lean form of a predator. One morning, Sam found it circling the goat pen, not attacking, but watching with unnerving focus. The message was clear. This was no longer a helpless orphan. It was a wolf learning what it was meant to be. Neighbors grew louder in their objections. "It'll take a calf," next one warned. And then what? Sam's defenses crumbled under the pressure. He knew they weren't wrong. He had seen the glint in the pup's eyes, the sharpness of instinct impossible to ignore. But love tangled with reason. He couldn't imagine his days without that howl at dusk, that weight curling against his legs. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning. Sam awoke to frantic knocking on his door. A calf from a nearby ranch had been attacked overnight. The evidence was messy tracks blurred by rain bite marks that could have belonged to coyotes. But suspicion pointed straight toward his farm. Though the pup had been with him all night sleeping in the barn, the whispers spread. Reed's wolf is the problem. That afternoon, the white pickup returned. This time the officers were less patient. "Mr. Reed, you can't keep it. You've done your part. Now, let us do ours." Sam stood in silence. The pup pressed against his leg, growling low. His heart pounded. He wanted to fight, to argue, to hold on to the bond he had built. But he could see the truth in their eyes. The law was no longer abstract. It was standing on his porch. That night, Sam couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch staring at the mountains in the distance. The pup lay at his feet, its breathing steady. Somewhere out there beyond the fences and the flood-scarred fields, wolves roamed free. Wolves that had never known Barnes laws or human hands. He knew then what he had to do. Sam Reed had saved the pup once. Now, to truly save it, he would have to let it go. The morning of the decision came quietly, as if the land itself understood the weight of what was about to happen. The storm-wrecked barn still lay in ruins, fences sagged where the flood had torn them, but Sam's eyes were fixed only on the wolf pup. It was no longer small. Its legs had grown long and sure, its coat thick with the silver of youth, and its gaze carried the steady fire of the wild. Sam knew what that meant. The pup had outgrown his farm. It had outgrown him. He called the wildlife officers himself. His voice cracked as he explained that he was ready. They told him to bring the wolf to a nearby sanctuary, where biologists would prepare it for reintroduction into the wild. He agreed, but when he hung up, his hands shook so badly he had to sit down. That night, Sam barely slept. He sat by the pup's pen, stroking its fur as it dozed, listening to its breathing. Every sound was a memory. The tiny whimpers from that first night in his kitchen. The fevered stillness when he thought it might not survive. The high-pitched howl that had cut through the storm. Each moment replayed like film in his mind, a story written in the space between man and wolf. When dawn broke, he loaded the pup into a crate lined with blankets. It resisted at first, pressing its paws against the wooden frame, whining with confusion. Sam whispered, "I know. I don't want this either." The drive was long, winding through the foothills where pines clung stubbornly to rocky slopes. The pup lay quietly, but every so often it raised its head, sniffing at the air as if it knew the mountains were calling. At the sanctuary gates, Sam's chest tightened. A team of biologists waited, clipboards in hand, eyes bright with purpose. To them, this was success. Another wolf saved, another chance to restore balance to Colorado's wild heart. To Sam, it felt like loss. He carried the crate to an open pen where the pup would stay until it was strong enough to join the pack being reintroduced into the wilderness. When he opened the door, the pup hesitated. It stepped out slowly, ears twitching, golden eyes, searching for the only face it trusted. Sam knelt, holding his ground. He wanted to scoop it back into his arms to turn the truck around to erase the phone call. But he didn't. Instead, he whispered, "Go find your family out there. Be what you were born to be." The pup pressed its nose to his hand, a fleeting touch, then turned toward the open gate. For a heartbeat, it paused. Then it lifted its head and howled. The sound was clearer now, stronger than the broken cries of its youth. It was the call of a wolf, learning its place in the world. Sam's eyes burned as he listened. He knew it was goodbye. The pup trotted forward, slipping into the shadows of the pen. It did not look back until the very last moment. At the gate's edge, it stopped, turning its head, golden eyes locking with Sam's. And then, with a final flick of its tail, it vanished into the wilderness waiting beyond. Sam Reed stood alone at the sanctuary fence, his hand still tingling from that final touch. He had saved the wolf pup. He had loved it. And in letting it go, he had given it the only gift that mattered: freedom. But the silence it left behind cut deeper than any storm. Weeks turned into months. The sanctuary biologists kept their promise and updated Sam whenever they could. The pup, no longer a helpless orphan, was thriving. It had joined a small pack being monitored in the Colorado backcountry, fitted with a tracking collar that sent signals across mountains and valleys. For the scientists, it was data. For Sam, it was proof that his sacrifice had meant something. But life on the farm was quiet again. Too quiet. The barn was rebuilt, fences mended, fields tilled for the next season. But every evening, as the sun fell, Sam found himself listening for a sound that was no longer there. The porch felt colder without the pup curled at his feet. The nights stretched longer without the thin, eager howls rising from the barn. Still, he carried on. That was what farmers did. He rose before dawn, tended to his animals, worked until his hands ached. Yet a piece of him remained restless, as though the wilderness had left its mark deep inside. One morning, while checking fence lines, he noticed something unusual. Tracks, fresh ones, pressed into the mud along the creek bed, larger than a coyote's, lighter than a dog's. His breath caught. He crouched low, tracing the paw print with his fingertip. Could it be? That night, as the moon rose silver over the Rockies, Sam heard it. A howl, distant but unmistakable. It wasn't the uncertain cry of a pup anymore. It was full, strong, and wild. The sound rolled down the valley, echoing across his fields. For a long moment, Sam stood frozen on his porch, his chest tight, his eyes burning. The wolf had returned not to stay, but to remind him. Biologists confirmed weeks later that the wolf had been spotted with its pack ranging near the very valley where Sam's farm lay. It was healthy, hunting well, and playing its role in restoring balance to the land. For Sam, that was all the closure he needed. But the memory lingered. Every storm reminded him of the night he sheltered it under the porch. Every culvert overflow after heavy rain reminded him of the desperate cry that had pulled him from his routine into something extraordinary. The farm was still his world, but the wild was now part of his heart. In town, people spoke of wolves with mixed voices, some angry about livestock losses, others proud of the reintroduction program. Sam didn't join the debates. He had lived the answer. He knew the wolf was not a villain or a pet. It was a survivor, a symbol of what nature could be when given a second chance. And in his quiet moments, he carried that lesson like a lantern through the solitude of his days. Sam Reed's story was not about keeping a wolf. It was about letting one go. about understanding that love sometimes means release, and that the wild belongs not in our homes, but in our hearts. And somewhere beyond the ridges beneath the endless Colorado sky, a wolf lifted its voice to the moon, answering the silence of the man who once saved it. Stories like Sam Reed's remind us of something bigger than one farmer, one storm, or even one wolf. They remind us of the delicate thread that binds humans to the wild. That thread can be tested, stretched, and nearly broken, but when it holds, it shapes a future where both can survive together. The wolf pup Sam saved was not meant to stay in his kitchen or his barn. It was meant to roam rivers and ridges, to lift its howl into mountain skies, to take its rightful place in the tapestry of the wild. By letting it go, Sam honored that truth. And in doing so, he joined the story of Colorado's great conservation effort. Colorado's wolf reintroduction program is more than numbers on a chart. Yes, the goal is clear: 30 to 50 wolves restored in the next 3 to 5 years. But the real mission runs deeper. It's about healing an ecosystem fractured by time and human intervention. Wolves are keystone predators. Their presence shapes rivers, forests, and prairies. They bring balance. They bring resilience. And yet balance is not simple. For ranchers and farmers, wolves are also a challenge. They test patience, they test livelihood, and they force hard conversations about coexistence. Sam's story captures that tension not through politics, but through personal experience. He didn't ask for a wolf to enter his life, but when it did, he chose compassion. The lesson is not to bring wolves into our homes. The lesson is to respect them in theirs, to understand that wild animals are not ours to keep, but ours to protect. To see the wolf not as an enemy, but as a reminder that the wilderness still breathes beyond our fences. Sam learned that love can mean letting go. And so can we. Each of us has a role in conservation, whether it's supporting sanctuaries, protecting habitats, or simply spreading awareness. Small choices multiplied by thousands shape the landscapes our children will inherit. So when you hear a howl in the distance, whether from Colorado's mountains or any place where wolves still walk, remember this. It's not just an animal's call. It's the sound of resilience, of survival, of nature reclaiming its place. And it's a sound worth protecting. This story was about one farmer, one wolf pup, and one storm. But the message belongs to all of us. The wild is fragile, precious, and worth fighting for. If Sam Reed could save a wolf, imagine what we can save together.